Good day, and welcome back to the home of the Grande Pacific Railroad. We're going to talk today about foam, styrofoam foam, bead board. A lot of posts and videos by various people on the use of this product. It is a great money saver and weight saver and simple tool to material to use to create scenery, relief, whatever you want to do with it on your model railroad. So I thought I'd cover a couple points, but my big thing on this video is to show you how to use bead board for scenery purposes. And there's a real big difference here because and a difference in cost. So let's start first with styrofoam, i.e. this right here, this blue sheet of stuff, and I don't have a whole lot of this around because styrofoam is not something you can pick up for free. And I'm going to try to get real close right there on that edge. Styrofoam is closed cell. Now this is only a half-inch piece. It can be effectively used. I have used this up where it's 2 inches thick. I built a modular railroad, and basically it was 2x8 sections, had a bed frame around it, and used a 2x8 by 2 inches thick piece of foam that the railroad actually was built on. This stuff can be very strong. It is effective. You can do a lot with it. It's also very expensive. You have to buy this. You're not going to find it laying around. And it comes in, basically, I don't know if it comes in another color, but basically it comes in blue and pink. Not that the color is important, but if you see pink and somebody says, well, I got foam, you'll know it's styrofoam. It's closed to cell, and this has got some pretty good strength to it. If you cut this straight and you get some just like lumber, if you get some good edges and you glue it real well together and let it dry, you could develop some real strength with this. You could make some I-beams out of it, and I'll guarantee you it would hold up quite a bit of weight. But anyway, this is not what we're going to be using today, but I just want to let you know the differences that you can get. So this was styrofoam. Now, this is good old what I call bead board. Everybody gets this in everything they buy, packing material or whatever. This you can find for free. Now, this one is pretty closed in on the cell. If you want to paint that surface right there, this is really hard to see because it's white, but if you want to paint that surface, say blue for sky, you wouldn't have a problem. It would close up with standard latex paint would pretty well close it up, and we'll show you that in effect here in a minute where it was done. And you can see on the edge, if you look on the edge, there's not a whole lot of cells showing through. Now this has been cut, so that's not a factory edge. This is some what I call bead board, and if you look at this, and I don't know if it's going to show up, but if you see it, you can see the cells. You're not going to be able to paint this real well and come up with a nice sky. I mean, you're going to have a lot of stuff, and I can show you that too. I can show you what happens with this when you try to paint it and use it for a background. Now, if you look at the edge here, all these are cut pretty smooth, so it's not really showing up, but this would be large cell stuff. Now, when you break this apart, you can really start seeing it when it comes apart. This material really has no strength to it. I would not try to use this for even for a bridge abutment or something. Wouldn't even try to use it for that. You can push in on it very easily, and it's not coming back. Once you dent it or stuff, it's permanent. So, but it's great for creating scenery. And I will refer you on the video to 2 videos I did recently on this project that's right off to my right. You can't see right at the moment. But these are what we're talking about. So this is the materials we're talking about. So how do we effectively use them? So let's go on from there. On all the foam that I do on this railroad, and if you go back and look at my YouTube channel, A. Houston 3 on YouTube, and go to the playlist for the Grande Pacific Railroad, you'll see every time I've done a scenery video, I use the foam and stick it together. Well, I stick it together with this white glue. And it's nothing more than taking glue, putting some on the foam, and you got to put a pretty good, you got to cover all the places you want to stick, but I'm going to cut this short for video sake. And then take it, whatever the other piece is, and stick it together. Now, you're going to get this stuff all put together, cut and put in place, and we'll cover this off in a second. You're going to walk away from it. You're not coming back to play with it again until tomorrow. Let it dry. Let it stick to whatever you're working on, the base or wherever it is, before you go try to do things to it. And again, you can when you watch the 2 videos I'm going to refer to, you can almost see as the videos break and we go from step to step. I'm letting things dry so that you can work on them. Now, once you have it dried and everything's in place, then you're going to get to carving it. And that's the whole thing that I want to say, talk about, is how I carve it. There's been several good videos done. They're on YouTube. Model Railroad Hobbyist had one recently. There's all kind of ways to work with this stuff. The styrofoam, I mean, I watched a guy carve that, literally sit there and carve it with an X-Acto knife. If that's what you want to do and create that kind of relief and detail, I would surely say go for it. Me, I got this tool here, and this is the handy dandy. This is the one I've mentioned a couple of times, shown it in a video, but this is the tool which I do most of the carving with. And we're going to give you a demo on this. So let me go over and cover this off just so you'll have all the details. This is the tool, and this is the box it comes in. Like everything in life, if it works good, it is good, and it does what you want, it ain't cheap. Best I've seen on this one's about $250, and that was on eBay. These things are not cheap, but then again, like I said, it works. So it's the old story about if it works, you got to do it. Inside the box, you get an assortment of other cutting devices, a wire brush, and all kind of stuff to clean it with, and so forth. Another blade that does different things. So it gives you all kind of attachments that come into with it. Now, the other knife that I have is this knife, and it is, I gotta get this away from the camera. This knife here is from Harbor Freight, is where I bought it. Now I think it was under $20. They all work on 110 volts. Plug them into a 110 volt plug. and both units have a trigger on them. This one has one here, the other one's got a trigger. This is a little more sophisticated. It's got a pistol grip trigger. But this one is not as effective, and it doesn't get as hot as the other one does. And before I go any further, these things, including your eyesight, you must have protective lenses and glasses on your eyes. I'll give you try to show you on the carpet down here what happens. But particularly in the case of this knife, hot knife right here, it gets very, very hot. And it will melt the plastic, so you don't want to have it. Needless to say, it'll burn your hand or skin like you wouldn't believe. So this is a case of be prepared to use these. Think about what you're doing. You don't want to be using this where you're distracted. You want to have a metal pan or something to place them in, to set them down on when you finish using while you're working. Because anything you set them on, they're going to get burned because they don't cool off that fast, particularly this model right here. That big blade is quite thick, and it will stay hot for a considerable length of time. It doesn't cool as fast as this one does, but this one gets hotter. So, moving ahead here. All right, while working on the foam, getting it in place and cutting it to create your scene or block it up, and believe me, you're just going to want to get the rough area filled in. You're going to carve it up with the hot knife as far as the outside. And again, that shows up in that video, how that assembly of the sections, and you'll see it. This is a big, as an X-Acto knife with a big blade, long blade in it. That works real good. It's very sharp. Another thing, got to have sharp blades in these things, devices, or they'll hang up in the foam like crazy. This is a real good device because it's got a very sharp blade on it, and it's also long. So if you get a 1.5 inch or inch and a half piece of foam like that thick, the blade will cut through it. So that's a good one. Got a warning for you. Don't go steal mommy's kitchen knife out the kitchen. Just go buy you one at Walmart. Somewhere along the line on the last layout, and we didn't even find it after we tore the layout down. One of these got buried somewhere, and it was one of my wife's favorite knives. We never found it. That layout got torn down, the house is gone, so all I can say is it's out there somewhere, but just go to Walmart, buy one. Serrated edge, it's good. With a big long knife, you have to get in there and make cuts after you got something up that, whatever. Very rarely ever use this thing, but every now and then it comes in handy. Tunnels. So we're going to build a tunnel. In the video, which I'm going to, again, the two videos, it's the big scene on the Grande Pacific Part 1 and 2, where I build the tunnels and all that around the center orb ending piece. There's a lot of cutting of foam as I stacked it in to create the tunnel. Inside of the tunnel, this is effectively by stacking, this creates the tunnel and it's lined and so forth. I also in one case took a piece of 1/2 inch foam and actually just cut this entire thing out and used it for a tunnel facing and put some mud on it and so forth, which when I say mud, I'm referring to Calcoat 127, which you will see in the video of the big scene being used. But this makes it real simple. Instead of keep going out and buying tunnel facings, just, you know, cut your own. But you got to have the right opening, so you take your marks a lot like so. And you have to have one more tool, and that is the good old Woodland Scenics hot wire cutter. And we get it turned on here. And we didn't rehearse this part, so hopefully it's heating up. And we simply take this talk about tough. I'm trying to cut this and watch the monitor on the video machine. Okay, this is fun. Okay, so bingo, there's your tunnel opening. So if you were to use this like this, you go back, you have a tunnel. And of course you're going to paint the inside of that piece of styrofoam black, just like I did in the video. Dark brown or whatever color, weathered black, I don't care, but you're not going to leave it white. Don't even bother to go put it up. You see in the video that I told you to go watch, I take all this stuff outside and paint it. Then you got all these neat little pieces, which I'm sure if you really want to come up with something, you can do it. Alright, so you see making how easy it is to create a tunnel. Now, if you got some real crazy engines like L131s and big boys that with the pivoted, articulated, and they swing way out, as you get into the tunnel, you may want to make the inside a little bit wider, just so we don't have things hang up. And all that video and construction on this big project I just finished, when we got finished testing, all said and done, the engine actually did hit in one place. And that's where that came in handy. We reached in there and sliced it, and then took a long paintbrush, went in and repainted it black, and that took care of that. So that's another advantage to foam. You can easily correct mistakes. So this covers the part about, you know, you're going to take your foam. Where do I get the foam? Well, that particular piece right there is off of a 4x4 sheet, which a good friend of mine who drives a bus and who plays with trains called me one day and says, "You need some foam?" And I said, "Sure do. I always can use more styrofoam." No, in this case, I'll call this bead board. We're cleaning out the parts room in the back, and I got these big stacks of 4 foot by 4 foot sheets of this, and that's a little over an inch thick. Boom. So I went to the house to pick it up. I had no idea what I was going to get. Well, a good thing I brought my Honda Odyssey with me, because we filled up the back of it, and just about didn't get it all in the car. But yeah, again, I literally have never paid for bead board. You can get this material anywhere. White glue's cheap. Glue it together, get it in place, harden it up, and then you can start carving it. And that's the next thing we're going to talk about, is carving. This is the finished scene that I worked on just recently. Okay? Everything you see here that looks like, you know, rocks and all that, most of it is just carved out styrofoam. Bead board, I'm sorry. Let's call it bead board, because it isn't styrofoam. And exceptions to that rule, and I'm going to really try to see if I can get this to show up, because it's hard to say. Right here, you'll see a little discoloration running horizontally across here. I think that, yeah, no, let's go down here. That's where a seam is, and you have to put the mud in. There's actually almost 2 inches of beadboard here. There's 2 pieces in thickness, because one piece would be running too risky here to try to carve it with just one 1-inch piece, and you would have no strength at all, i.e. if I'm pushing on this. I mean, I'm putting 20, 30 pounds of pressure on that. Now, it is bending. I mean, it's hard for you to see it. But it's given, but it's not going to break. So, like I said, that's about 2 inches. I put one piece in place, glued it in there, had it all. Then when I came up with the final idea on how I was going to create this, I said, well, I'll just glue another piece on the front of it. And we ended up with a couple of seams. There's a piece of 1x4. Let's see here. It's a piece of 1x4 that runs right along the top here. That makes the frame of the thing. So, and it had a little setback in it. So right there, and this really doesn't show up. There's a seam which I had to fill before I started carving and all that stuff. Well, I carved it all, and then when I got finished, I filled it with cow coat so that the crack wouldn't show. So this is what you're striving for. People walk in and they say, how do you do that? You know, okay, this isn't plaster, people. There is no mess. Okay? And there's no paper shell, there's none of that. When you watch the videos, you'll see how it's done. Now, that carving over there was done with the very hot orange knife, and I'll identify it. These carvings were done with the blue knife. Now, one of the things that I noticed that I gotta go back, I gotta be more cognizant and fix. You can see the seam there where the styrofoam is stacked. Kind of caught that, really came to attention later after I painted it. So when I got to the other side, I started filling a lot of those seams in with cow coat just so they didn't show up. But all this, and this is kind of an idea what you can end up with when you get it done. So how do you accomplish that? Okay, we have plugged the guns plugged in, and I got the trigger pulled. Yeah, red light's on, it's hot, and it's smoking from stuff left on there. It definitely gets hot. Now, you want to cut something, it's just you know, it's the old stuff, hot knife through butter. Boom. Boom. Believe me, this thing is super hot. Okay, those ridges and those ruffles over there, you turn this thing sideways, it's hot, and you just let it cave in the foam. Okay? Foam will melt down, and I made this 2 pieces deep. Okay? Want to make some ridges in it, you cut them out, so on and so forth. It's just like that. You basically rub it sideways. Now, end result there is what you see. Doesn't look like much. Yeah. Gee, that's gonna do. Guess what? Go put a coat of paint on that, and that's my famous brown and white paint up there. The other trick is you get the brown and white stuff mixed up, you let it dry. It gets dry, then you take a brush called dry brush with white paint right on the edges, and it makes everything stand out. But that's how easy it is. And I'm gonna, tell you, this stuff gets so hot, it'll beat up. And if you like digging into it and pop it out, because some of those cracks and crevices up there, I kind of like pop them out. You want them to pop out and hit you in the eye, you would be in serious trouble. So you have to have safety glasses on to use this. My glasses have plastic lenses in them, something to protect your eyesight. And again, remember that blade is extremely hot. I mean, this is, the old hot knife through butter, choom, just like that, kids. It'll cut through this stuff like crazy. So you don't have to get exact on filling in the areas that you're going to be modeling. This will take care of it. You can carve it, do anything you want with it. So believe me, this is an effective way. Now, this takes practice. And the practice is experimentation, because there is no right way to do this. I'm going to set this down. There's no right way to do this. This is another example of bead board foam carved up with that hot knife that you just saw. And this creates the flat irons in Colorado. You know, my version. But looked at an awful lot of pictures that are on the internet of the area and what you could see and what happens. And everybody who's walked in here who's ever been up there and knows what it is, they'll tell you right off the bat. They'll walk in and say, oh, that's the flat irons area. Well, Denver and Rio Grande went through the flat irons. Tunnel 29 is right in the middle of it. So anyway, this was the creation, and there's one tunnel that goes, there's actually two tunnels that go from one section to another. And that's what we're depicting here. It made up the best. But, gentlemen, that is foam with paint on it. There might be some cracks here and there, and at the bottom, as you see in those videos, I fill in with Cal Coat. So, you know, you don't have big cracks or anything showing up, and it looks reasonable. But this is the type of scenery you can create to do it. That wall right there, or a piece of thing in the center of the picture, is a piece of very close cell beadboard, very tight. It's not big cells, it's little cells. It's not styrofoam, but it's very tight. And that picture right there above the Rocky Mounting Printing Company is sheetrock. That's a wall. If I step back here, you'll see what I'm talking about. That's a wall. It's a regular wall. And it was sheetrocked, and since it was my intention that this will be the final layout, it's not going to be my problem to go change the wall back. Somebody else will have to do it. I've told my daughter, just get some of that kill stuff and roll it out. It'll all cover. That piece of foam right there is big cells. And of course it looks like the sky's filled up with birds. That's about 3 or 4 coats of blue paint on there, so don't recommend you do that. You know, unless you just want that appearance. But again, that's the other side of the wall. Rocky Mountain Printing Company's right on the other side of that wall right there. Or it's thousands of miles away, whatever you want to look at it. Now, I told you about cutting out a tunnel portal. There it is. That's a piece of styrofoam covered with Cal Coat. I got a few more ideas on coloring on that one. Now, I guess you could get fancy, and if you wanted to, and take some time when you were putting the Cal Coat on it, because you have plenty of time. Cal Coat does not set up. You have hours to fool with it. So you have to let it dry overnight, good 24 hours. So you could sit there and probably make some carving on it to a certain degree. It's not carvable from the standpoint of typical things, but you could play with it, and I'm sure come up with some design on it. But anyway, I have some other ideas about colorization. That's one of my other portals, just plain old cutout. Now, the stacked plaster up in there. Usually have 1 or 2 little white spots I gotta go catch. Oh, camera tells all. But everything else in there was painted black. Okay? As we put it all, as it was all assembled. Again, a lot of this was just roughed in here, put in, and if you watch the videos, you'll see that a lot of it was sticking out. Then we took that hot knife and start carving it off. And then we ran it up sideways, like down in here, turned the blade sideways to create the roughness. This is another example of the blade being used sideways and just melting the styrofoam back. you know, look at rocks, get a design. That's a case, unless you really get in here and look, that's a case of the blade getting a little too deep. But it's okay. It works. And then we cut out, my wife walked in and said, well, why is that big crack in there? I says, honey, you've been to Colorado quite a few times. That's what happens. The water ran down there, ran out, you know, and of course it runs all the way to the bottom, and then it runs out the creek. Still, by the way, guys, haven't had anybody give me a name for this creek. You know, gotta have some name here. Can't have Cripple Creek, it's used. Grizzly Creek's used. Okay? So anyway, it's how we use foam. Now, again, let's go back. You don't, there is no right way to carve that piece of foam. Okay? That's the tools. This is the material. That's the glue. You can watch those other videos, and then all I gotta say, guys, let your imagination go wild. So my friend across the street, who's that hot knife belongs to, he's the youth administrator at his church. Takes care of all the kiddies. During the summer they have Bible class, school. And they always build something, and he has some styrofoam project. Well, he goes up to the insulation guy, and they buy large sections of bead board, and that's how they cut it up with. I've seen some of the things they've made, and it's just amazing. So he gives me a piece of bead board. Gee, as I said in the other thing, next project. And use your imagination, people. This is up here on Rocky Loop. What do you think I can do with that hot knife on that piece of foam? So get creative. So this is my story on how to make scenery. You can paint the foam. You can make it gray. I have some pictures on one of my thing where I actually took black paint, white, made it gray, let it dry. Then I went back and took a black wash and washed it so it highlighted in the cracks. George Celio's trick there. And Great Model Railroaders #2. Just highlighted the stuff in the cracks, and it looks just like granite. So any colors you want to make it work with, any paint colors you want to come in, you know, the Calcoat 127 is designed to stick to this stuff. So you fill in, get it all ready, paint it, and you highlight it, and you go back and texturize or whatever you want to do. Remember, while the paint's wet, you can sprinkle your weeds and stuff on it. It sticks, and you end up with things. You need to fill in gaps. This is the 60-inch level, and the back is raised up, so when the trains go down the main line, you can see them. Yard in the front. You want to be able to see your train, so you raise it up. Well, it'd be a big hole there if we don't fill it in. That's a piece of styrofoam with Calcoat 127 stuck on it and painted with latex paint, the brown and the white, and then it's sprinkled with weeds, woodland scenic weeds. Tunnel. Pretty long tunnel. Need access to tunnel. Okay, we did not want to have, because in our theory, that track right there is hundreds of miles from that track. Let's try to create scene separation. We didn't want to have tracks right behind the station, so we put the tunnel back there so you don't see the trains going back behind the station. You know, it's one of them little things. Somebody else probably say that guy's crazy. Yeah, what difference does it make? Well, that's the great part about the hobby. You come with it. But say you want the tunnel. Got to get in there and fix track, do something, clean it, whatever. There's the tunnel. Right there. So, you lift the tunnel out and you're in business. Again, separation. Cookie cut the plywood. This is 30 inches deep. Raise the back section up. Got it all running, working fine. So then you put the bead board up right in here. And you are ready to go. You put Calcoat on it. In this case, we didn't use the hot knife to create the design on the front. We used Calcoat. Same thing back in the corner. That was all filled in with foam. Same thing up here. It's all filled in with foam. It's just very simple. So we're going to say the good night on the end of this little story. The big thing is there's no wrong way to carve it up. Get creative, practice with it, play with it, and you can come up with stuff like this too. It's easy. I've said this 1,000 times. I banned all hydrocal and plaster from my layout. It's just, it causes way too much grief. Calcoat 127, it's shown in the other videos, the bag and the name of the company. It is an industrial insulation product. If you're going to buy styrofoam for any purposes in this hobby, go to a wholesaler, industrial insulation wholesaler, to buy it. Don't go to Home Depot and Lowe's. It really, the most they sell, I think, is about a 3/4 inch piece, and it gets expensive as compared to buying it from a wholesaler. But anyway, hope this helps get some people some ideas on how to improve on this scenery. And like I said, we'll post the links to the videos on this video. Have a great day. Run trains, and we'll get you to that other project down the road.